Hi guys, it's Frank with Tiny Plastic Spaceman here, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can convert and modify your Blood Bowl Orc models really easily. Now, if you have any questions or comments, be sure to put them in the comments section down below. Okay, so here we are with the standard Orc team from the 2016 Games Workshop Blood Bowl box set. These haven't even been painted yet. I've just been modifying them a little bit here and there. So just as an example, we've got the standard Orc, the Orc thrower. So this is the standard arm, and on this one I've modified that arm a little bit so he's looking like he's still thinking where he's going to be going. And let's see, on this arm is standard, and on this one I've modified it just a tiny bit. You can see how it's just turned just a little bit. So not a huge amount of difference there. I think the biggest difference obviously is that right arm. On the Black Orc, didn't really touch the left arm because there's quite a bit of work and molding that would have to be done. But I did change this right arm on this guy. You can see I've turned the wrist so it's a little bit you can see a bit more of the fist there inside that gauntlet. And on the Blitzer, I haven't done a huge amount here. Yeah, I've done this so he's basically, you can see that right arm is turned out quite a bit more, and we'll need to do some filler in there, and I'll show you how we do that in a minute. Now for the other linemen, I've turned this arm up and I've turned it down, and I changed this, is it this arm? I'm looking through the screen. Yeah, we'll have to do some filler in there. Not a big deal. I can probably even just leave that and maybe just grind that down with a file. Not a biggie. On this one, again, just mainly just changing the profile of, so it's just a slightly different look, because you're mostly looking at them down like this. So it's a little bit, this guy might take up a little bit more space now, just the way he's posed, but it's something a bit different. So they're not all identical. And this is my example guy. Let's see. Neither of these guys have been touched, I don't think. So I'm just going to show you how to do these very easily and quickly. And now I'll set these aside. I'll push over. Let's see, who do I need to? I need to fill that one. So I'll show you how to do that. So first of all, let's go over the tools that you'll need. Now, my favorite clippers are these. These are great. I love them. But let's say you wanted to take this L-shaped piece of sprue that I've used to stir plaster with, and I just wanted to turn it 90 degrees, just like I do on these arms, which is basically all I'm going to be doing. Just very simple modifications. So you see, I get a nice flat edge on this one, on this side, but it's like a V shape on this. That's not so great. And then if I wanted to flatten that side, I can use a file or just use the clippers again to get a nice flat shape. But then once I turn that, I've now lost a bunch of the sprue material, the actual material there. So that's a bit of a pain. So the way we get around that is to not use these for, situations where it's better, such as clipping off bits of sprue and large pieces of plastic, and use a razor saw. Okay, so we're using the razor saw. Now you can get these. This is an X-Acto one. It's my favorite one, but Citadel, of course, make their own. Tamiya make their own. Obviously, I think the Citadel is going to, for most people that are going to be watching this, Citadel one is going to be the easiest one to find. But if you shop online, or if you have a terrain or model shop, like a scale plastic model shop near you, you'll be able to find all these things very easily. Now the rest of these tools are, just go over them very quickly. You've got a mold line remover, which is also like a good scraper for rounding off pieces. Nice set of files. And then you've got your glues. You've got cyanoacrylate or super glue type here. This is more of a gel now, but it's very good glue. I do prefer the plastic deluxe material stuff, which is what this is, but this is a fast-acting plastic glue, cement I should say, and this is the gel type plastic cement. So those will be what I'm going to be using for these, because these are plastic models. Now, if you're going to be doing a lot of, say, major sculpting, like if you wanted to take this guy's leg and cut it at the knee and then bend it up so that it looks like he's running, then you'll probably, especially if you're going to be like re-sculpting pieces of the leg because it's going to be missing, you're going to need to make a little, I don't want to use the word armature, but it kind of is what it is. It basically use a paper clip and use that to repose the model, and for that you'll need a nice pin vise. This happens to be a Citadel tool. I think the only one I have. The only Citadel tool I have. But this is what you're going to need, and then you'll fill in the missing pieces of the model with either putty or green stuff, more likely, because that will be that'll help bond everything together. Now, the putty I'm going to use, there's a couple different types, or with many brands. There's MMD Squadron, which is really good, Tamiya, which is really good. I like to use the Deluxe Materials Perfect Plastic Putty, but you will need tools for the shaping, stuff like that, because it has a big, like it's basically like toothpaste type tube. But the Vallejo stuff, or Vallejo, is really good as well, because it has a tiny little applicator tip. You can see there. So on this guy who has a big chunk of arm missing, as you can see there, I'm just going to basically just use this to fill it in and then let it dry for a few hours, overnight, whatever, and then just come back with the knife and fill that in. So it's very easy. I think, who was the other guy that was missing a big chunk? It was this guy here. So I'm going to do the same thing with him. And this stuff, it dries within an hour or two to where you can maneuver it. Basically, just experiment with it. It dries fairly quickly, but once it does dry, you can actually sand it down and paint with it. But while it is drying, you can push it around, and especially on organic pieces, like if you'd cut the arm or a cape or something like that, you can put in the folds and the wrinkles and stuff like that of the skin or cloth or whatever with pretty much any tool that you want, even a toothpick or something like that. So gonna let those guys sit aside, and we're going to get the razor saw and just show you how easy it is to modify these guys. Now, these guys are not modified at all. So what I'm going to do is basically just cut the arms, cut one arm on each guy, and just show, just have a go and see what sort of pose I can get with them. Now, I'm not going to be too precious with these because, first of all, they're just standard plastic models. They're quite cheap. And mostly you're going to be, the main reason is because you're mostly going to be looking at them from a top-down view, sort of like this. Like, at most like that sort of angle. You're not going to be looking at it like really super up close. So I'm not too worried about things like missing armbands and stuff like that if I cut those away on the inside of the arms. So first thing we're going to do is just get the razor saw, and you see where this gauntlet is. I'm just going to cut right along the edge there, and that will go right to the elbow of the right arm. So just a couple of light cuts. Let the weight of the saw, which isn't very substantial by the way, let the weight of the saw do the initial part of the work, and then as it starts to get more bite, just be wary of it. Once it does cut through that arm, the arm may or may not go flying across the room. So there we go. So there we go. We have a little bit of plastic dust. So we're going to just remove most of the sort of the sawdust, I suppose it'd be. Just clean that up and see what we've got. It's a nice, perfectly flat cut. And we're just going to go on this and just go around the edge. Now this piece of bicep here, I'm just going to cut that off because we're not going to be using that piece of the arm now. So he's missing part of his arm. So now if I just put it straight back, we end up with the same basic, exactly the same pose, okay? But what we're going to do is basically, I think we're just going to bend it down a bit, maybe something like that. Okay, very, very simple. Now, possibly the easier glue to use for this, you can use the quick glue, you can use super glue. I prefer to use plastic cement, the gel stuff usually, because it just seems to have a harder, more secure connection because it takes longer to dry. So once you do that, then you're okay. Now you see on the inside there, underneath, it's obviously it doesn't look right, but that's okay. I'm not worried about that. These are Blood Bowl guys. So here though, that tricep piece, the muscle on the back of the upper arm, doesn't connect at all to that to the elbow. So I'm just going to shave that down quite crudely, to be honest, with the cutters. And then once this is dry and I'm not worried about dislodging that, I'm going to come back and just shave that down with the files. Or you can use the model scraper like this, but it's a bit more crude. File would get in there a lot easier. Okay, so now, so you see how they're just slightly changed in difference. It also takes up a little bit less room in a carry case, but you know, it's not a big deal. So now that's the right arm on this guy done, so I'm going to do the left arm on this guy. And basically, just going to do the same thing. Come along the gauntlet there, start with a light cut, and try not to cut myself while also not losing the arm across the table. There we go. So you can see the remains of the upper arm. And so for that arm, we basically just twisted it. On this one, I'm going to do something a little bit different and just basically just bend it so his arm is coming up a bit. Probably going to need some filler on this one. Actually, it doesn't really work so well. Yeah, it doesn't really work so well because that blade, which I don't really want to cut off, but the blade kind of comes, if I bent the arm in like that, yeah, that would work better. Okay, so yes, so you know, yes, we are losing a lot of detail on the inside of the arm, but again, I am not worried about it. I might cut off that blade and maybe even reposition it elsewhere, just so the arm can come up a bit. There we go. That works a lot better. Okay. Hopefully that's coming in focus because I'm looking at it off the screen. So there we are. And you see I'm trying to line up the arm, the edges of the arm pieces where I've cut them, so that in the most visible position it makes sense. Okay, now I'm going to just get that blade, and even though it's not a perfectly flat cut, that, although no, I will cut it flat because it's less likely for it to go anywhere. Now again, I am losing some material here, but it's not, because it's just a blade that I'm attaching, it should be fine. There we are. So now I've repositioned the arm and the blade, and what I'm going to do is just get some of the quick stuff, just dab that on, and that should help. That'll hold it in place really well. So now he's got a new gauntlet weapon, and the arm is different. So there we are. Right. Okay, so that's it. Pretty easy. Now, once you do that to a couple of guys, you kind of tend to go crazy, and if you're anything like me, and do every single model on the rest of the team. So there you go. Have fun with it. Okay, so that's it. Pretty easy, huh? So now you know how you can modify and customize your models to be pretty much anything you want on the pitch. So if you have any questions or comments, be sure to put them down below and I'll get to them as quickly as I possibly can. And while you're at it, make sure and check out tinyplasticspaceman.com. Search for us on Facebook, just search for @tinyplasticspaceman. And of course, we're on Instagram at TPS Painting Studio. Okay, so that's it. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.